CNN celebrated their legal victory when Jim Acosta got his press pass reinstated. But what does it mean for everybody else? Byron York, writing yesterday, said, and I quote, the Acosta decision could make it easier for White House officials to kick reporters out, end quote. Joining me now to discuss is former White House press secretary and senior advisor to the America First Action PAC, Sean Spicer, along with former Ronald Reagan aide and author of the forthcoming book, Swamp Wars, Jeffrey Lord. All right, gentlemen, let's talk about the new rules the White House has laid out for reporters. Actually, will they be followed by Acosta and his colleagues in the press room? Or is the White House going to need to come up with a maybe 3 strikes and you're out plan? Sean, your view on this new announcement of the White House?
Well, Governor, it's great to see you. I think I talked about this in my podcast with Kellyanne Conway. This is a discussion about content versus conduct. And I think there's a very capable press secretary that's right now able to discern the difference between the two. No one has a question about the content of any reporter's question. They can ask whatever they want. But their conduct is what's in question. And I think that's what the judge ruled the other day. Will they behave in a way that's professional? Will they respect not just the office of the presidency, but their fellow reporters? And I think that's what this really comes down to. I think there's a great press secretary now. You may know her, that knows how to call balls and strikes. And there's a president that knows how to understand that as well. And I think this is what it comes down to. And where other organizations, no names mentioned, but you may guess them, are trying to blur the lines is the question about what the content is. No one cares what the reporter asks. They can ask whatever question they want. But the way that these reporters conduct themselves, do they conduct themselves and show respect to not only the fellow reporters, but to the President of the United States and the White House, is what's in question.
Jeffrey, the judge ruled in a rather narrow way. He did not say that the First Amendment was in any way being attacked by Jim Acosta losing his hard pass. It was just that the process was not fully maybe visible to the world, and therefore his Fifth Amendment issue was the only one. But they celebrated as if somehow that they had taken a stand for democracy. I don't remember any of the mainstream media being really that clever, clear, and honest about what that ruling was from the judge last week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Governor. And Sean has hit the nail on the head. This is about conduct, not about content. You know, in the last couple days, we've heard from Major Garrett now with CBS. In the Obama days, of course, he was the White House correspondent for Fox. No one remembers Major Garrett acting like Jim Acosta. It's because he didn't. There is a way to do this. Sean has been the White House press secretary. I've been a press secretary to a senator and a congressman before that. This is totally unprofessional stuff. And I think that CNN has to be very careful here of what they wish for. Because now, if there are going to be a set of rules and regulations, then the good press secretary that Sarah is, she's going to have to, and she will, I have no doubt, call them out. You know, one other thing, I took a quick look back at a memory from childhood of JFK's press conferences where he had adversarial reporters. They were so well-mannered, Governor. It's beyond belief. We have gone so far down the path in the wrong direction with this stuff. And it's almost unbelievable. And I think CNN and Jim Acosta will come to regret it. So will their compadres in the room.
I want to get your thoughts on the fact that the White House Correspondents Association have announced that it's not going to have a comedian roast the media next year at what's known as the annual Nerd Prom. Instead, they're going to have biographer Ron Chernow, who's going to be the featured speaker, to put some perspective on today's politics and history. Last year's speaker, anti-Trump comedian Michelle Wolf, tweeted this in response. She said, and I quote, "The White House Correspondents Association are cowards. The media is complicit, and I couldn't be prouder," end quote. First of all, I'm not sure they had a comedian last year. They had Michelle Wolf, and she just wasn't funny. So, Sean, what's your response to the fact that Correspondents Association, for the first time in decades, has decided that they're not going to have that kind of lack of political humor going on?
You know what? Here's my response. I applaud Olivia Knox and the White House Correspondents Association for doing this. They want to have a dinner that celebrates the First Amendment, and it actually shows that that's what their intent is. So I applaud them for it, because last year they wanted to have a comedian, and they talked about how this comedian, Michelle Wolf, would conduct herself and talk about the First Amendment. And it wasn't. It was rude. It was disgusting. And I think for them to at least acknowledge the fact that they want to talk about the First Amendment and have a historian do it, I don't know what this individual is going to talk about, but I think at least their intent is right. And I'll give them credit for that, because last year's dinner was disgusting. And what I thought was more appalling about the dinner than anything is that they branded it as about the First Amendment. The comedian, if that's what you call her, wasn't that. And no one in the White House correspondence from NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN said anything about the way that this person, so-called, conducted themselves in the, quote, spirit of the First Amendment. So to see them at least acknowledge that that wasn't the right direction is at least something that I want to applaud and say, at least you got the message.
Well, we'll see how it works out. Jeffrey, Sean, great to have you both.
The White House today outlining new rules for presidential news conference. The White House has dropped its effort to remove the hard pass of CNN reporter Jim Acosta. The rules include limiting journalists to one question each, follow-ups at the discretion of the president, and the letter warned, should you refuse to follow these rules in the future, we will take action. Well, joining me now to take up all of this, the fight over the acting attorney general and more, Harmeet Dillon, attorney, RNC committee woman for the great state of California. Great to have you with us. Greg Jarrett, Fox legal analyst, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax, and always good to have you with us. Harmeet, let me begin with you. These rules tonight, and if we could, let's put those up full screen just for a second. These look pretty simple, straightforward. Does this meet the test of due process that Judge Kelly asserted?
Well, it's step one in the due process. First, you have to have the rules announced in advance, and then you have to have a warning and notice an opportunity to be heard and respond. So I do think it satisfies the due process, and now it remains to be seen whether Acosta is going to carry out his part, which is either behaving or being able to justify his actions. And if he toes the line as a result of this, then everybody will be better off, and we won't have anything to worry about. But if he doesn't, or somebody else doesn't, then yes, the White House has the right to institute proceedings, give them an opportunity to respond, and then take a final action.
Your thoughts?
There have always been rules of decency and decorum that White House correspondents have always practiced. When I was there temporarily, I knew the rules. I abided by the rules. Then it comes along guys like Jim Acosta, and they think they have the right to be rude and abrasive and obnoxious and commandeer the news conference and argue with the president and prevent his colleagues from posing their questions.
You have to believe that they're a little upset, the White House press corps,
oh, sure,
that he has messed it up for them.
Yeah, and if I were press secretary, what I would do is the next time Acosta pulls that, I would say that's the end of the news conference, not only today, but the rest of the week.
That's what the president said he will do.
And his colleagues, Acosta's colleagues, would have surrounded him and threatened to tar and feather him and kick him out. And that is the most effective way to get rid of that kind of conduct. Well,
let's be honest here. I want to ask you both this. Why isn't there a time where you have to just tell a district court judge to go to hell? Because I mean, the idea that you have to follow the dicta of a district court judge and create rules and can't run the White House in the way that it has been run since time immemorial. Harmeet?
Well, Lou, to be fair to the judge, if you read his ruling from the bench, it seems clear that he felt that he was constrained by a prior decision of the court,
that's
which
patent
said that,
nonsense. That was a 1977. Excuse me, Harmeet. That was an idiotic, in my opinion, ruling. This judge took a case in which you're dealing with a Nation reporter. It wasn't about anything but his politics. It had nothing to do with conduct. It had nothing to do with decorum and disrupting a presidential press conference. It wasn't on point at all, in my opinion. You guys are the lawyers,
right.
but
well,
I mean...
Your question was, should we tell the judge to go to hell? And the answer is that's generally not a good idea. And I do think that norms announced in advance, even though they're obvious, like, you shouldn't have to tell people to behave like adults. But now
you
that
shouldn't
we
have to tell a district court judge to get back in your bailiwick either. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. When you are there's no freedom to be obnoxious and rude. There's no freedom of the press to question the president It's a privilege to be there at the White House, and there are rules and norms that have always been followed. And now you've got a judge who has decided to expand due process beyond any resemblance
He's
of
telling
its
a president
original
of the United
intent.
States how
and
to
I
conduct
agree
business.
with you. I would tell the judge, go to hell. We're going to practice the way we want. Let the Supreme Court decide it if necessary.
Let me turn very quickly to the president prepared to give his written answers to Robert Mueller. Let's take his comments to Chris Wallace yesterday, if we could, please.
The questions were asked and answered. It wasn't a big deal. You know, they make it like I had meetings for many, many hours. I got the questions. I responded. We wrote them out. I read them once. I read them a second time. We made some changes. That's it. I think that should solve the problem. I hope it solves the problem. If it doesn't, you know, I'll be told and we'll make a decision at that time. But probably this is the end.
There's the president. Harmeet, is this the end, in your best judgment?
Well, I think it should be the end from the president's side. I think this is handled correctly, and this is the extent of his involvement in this. Now, who knows what Mueller is going to do with this, and there may be a second round. This may attempt to go on forever, but I hope that this puts an arrest to it, and this is the appropriate way to handle it, given how busy the president is.
All right. Greg?
With obstruction off the table, it should have taken 5 minutes to answer the questions. I don't know anything about collusion. I don't know anybody else in my campaign who knew or colluded with Russia. End of story. And you can dismiss allegations of the Trump Tower meeting. Did Trump know in advance? I did not. He said that repeatedly. Did you mislead anyone in your dictated statement? It was accurate to the best of my knowledge. So, I mean, those are the main questions. They should be easy to answer.
And after over 2 years of investigating this president and his administration, enough is enough is enough. It's actually far more than enough.
Right.
Harmeet Dillon, Greg Jarrett, thank you both for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.